music. Hopefully it won't get banned from YouTube. We should be alright. But this is out of copyright, so it can't be banned for this because it's copyright free, because it was written by somebody who died more than 75 years ago. So, chapter 91. The peacock meets the rosebud. Rosebud. I'm not going to do that every time. Join me on Haps, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube or somewhere else, or Twitch. Join me on Haps, and you'll be able to see all the comments immediately and see everybody else, all the different people who comment. We'll see. Right, chapter 91, the peacock meets the rosebud. In vain it was to rake for ambergris in the paunch of this leviathan, insufferable fetter denying not inquiry. Sir T. Brown, V.E. Whatever that means. It was a week or two after the last whaling scene recounted, and when we were slowly sailing over a sleepy, vapoury midday sea, and that the many noses on the Peacock's deck proved more vigilant discoverers than the 3 pairs of eyes aloft, a peculiar and not very pleasant smell was smelt in the sea. "I will bet something now," said Stubb, "that somewhere hereabouts are some of those drugged whales we tickled the other day, and I thought they would keel up before long." Presently the vapours in advance slid aside, and there in the distance lay a ship, whose furled sails betokened that some sort of whale must be alongside. As we glided nearer, the stranger showed French colours from his peak, and by the eddying cloud of vulture seafowl that circled and hovered and swooped around him, it was plain that the whale alongside must be what the fishermen call a blasted whale, that is, a whale that has died unmolested on the sea, and so floated an unappropriated corpse. It may well be conceived what an unsavoury odour such a mass must exhale, worse than any Assyrian city in the plague. It's a bit harsh on Assyria. When the living are incompetent to bury the departed. So intolerable indeed it is regarded by some that no cupidity could persuade them to moor alongside of it. Yet there are those who will still do it, notwithstanding that oil obtained from such subjects is of a very inferior quality, and by no means of the nature of attar of rose, apparently. Lovely, stick down there. Okay. That was very nice, yes. All done there. Thank you. Shut up. Yes, so I have hot chocolate. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Filled to the brim with a lovely cup. Delicious. I reposition you a little bit so you can see. There we are. See my cup. Go on, steady. Stay upright. Alright. Come on. Stay there. Stay there. That's it. Well done. Right. Coming still nearer, with the expiring breeze, we saw that the Frenchman had a second whale alongside, and this second whale seemed even more of a nosegay than the first. A nosegay is a flower, by the way. In truth, it turned out to be one of those problematical whales that seem to dry up and die with a sort of prodigious dyspepsia, or indigestion, leaving their defunct bodies almost entirely bankrupt of anything like oil. Nevertheless, in the proper place we shall see that no knowing fisherman will ever turn up his nose at such a whale as this. However, much he may shun blasted whales in general. The Peacock had now swept so nigh to the stranger that Stubb vowed he recognised his cutting spade pole entangled in the lines that were knotted round the tail of one of those whales. "That's a pretty fellow now," he banteringly laughed, standing in the ship's bows. "There's a jackal for ye. I well know that those crappos of Frenchmen are but poor devils in the fishery, sometimes lowering their boat for breakers, mistaking them for sperm whale spouts. Yes, and sometimes sailing from their port with their hold full of boxes of tallow candles, and cases of snuffers, foreseeing that all the oil they will get won't be enough to dip the captain's wick into. Aye, and we all know those things, but looky, there's a crapo that is content with our leavings, the drugged whale there. Aye, and is content too with scraping the poor bones of that other precious fish he has there. Poor devil. I say, pass round the hat, someone, let's make him a present of a little oil for a dear charity's sake. For what oil he'll get from that drugged whale, that wouldn't be fit to burn in a jail. No, not in a condemned cell. And as for that other whale, I'll agree to get more oil by chopping it up and trying out those 3 masts of ours than he'll get from the bundle of bones. Now that I think about it, though, it may contain something worth a good deal more than oil. Yes, ambergris. I wonder now if our old man has thought of that. It's worth trying. Yes, I'm in for it. And so saying, he started for the quarterdeck. Though Stubb did not understand the Bhutan part of the inscription, I skipped chapter, by this time the faint air had become a complete calm, so that whether or no the Pequod was now fairly entrapped in the smell, with no hope of escaping except by its breezing up again. Issuing from the cabin, Stubb now called his boat's crew and pulled off for the stranger. Drawing across her bow, he perceived that in accordance with the fanciful French taste, the upper part of her stem piece was carved in the likeness of a huge drooping stalk, was painted green, and for thorns had copper spikes projecting from it here and there, the whole terminating in a symmetrical folded bulb of a bright red colour. Upon her headboards, in large gilt letters, it read Bouton de Rose, rose button or rose bud, and this was the romantic name of this aromatic ship. Though Stubb did not understand the Bhutan part of the inscription, yet the word rose and his bulbous figurehead put together sufficiently explained the whole to him. A wooden rosebud, eh? He cried with his hand to his nose. That will do very well, but like all creation, how it smells. Now, in order to hold direct communication with the people on deck, he had to pull round the bows on the starboard side, and thus came close to the blasted whale, and so to talk over it. Arrived then at this spot, with one hand still to his nose, he bawled, "Bouton de Rose, ahoy!" "Are there any of you Bouton de Roses that speak English?" "Yes," rejoined a Guernsey man from the woods, to be the chief mate. "Well then, my Bouton de Rose bud, have you seen the white whale?" "What whale?" "The white whale, a sperm whale, Moby Dick, have you seen him?" "Never heard of such a whale." "Cachalot blanche, white whale, no." "Very good then, goodbye now, and I'll call again in a minute." Then rapidly pulling back towards the Pequod, and seeing Ahab leaning over the quarter-deck rail, awaiting his report, he moulded his 2 hands into a trumpet and shouted, "No, sir, no!" Upon which Ahab retired, and Stubb returned to the Frenchman. Hot chocolate. He now perceived that the Guernsey man, who had just got into the chains, and was using a cutting spade, had slung his nose in a sort of bag. "What's the matter with your nose there?" said Stubb. "Broke it?" "I wish it was broken, or that I didn't have any nose at all," answered the Guernseyman, who did not seem to relish the job he was at very much. "But what are you holding yours for?" "Oh, nothing. It's a wax nose. I have to hold it. Fine day, isn't it? A rather garden day, I should say. Throw us a bunch of posies while we Bouton de Rose." "What in the devil's name do you want here?" roared the Guernseyman, flying into a sudden passion. "Oh, keep cool, cool. Yes, that's the word. Why don't you just pack those whales in ice while you're working at them? But joking aside, though, do you know, Rosebud, that it's been all nonsense trying to get up any oil out of such whales, and as for that dried up one there, he hasn't got a gill in his whole carcass. Gill, isn't it? Gill in his whole carcass." "I know that well enough, but you see the captain here won't believe it. This is his first voyage. He was a cologne manufacturer before. But come aboard, and mayhap he'll believe you. It won't me, and so I'll get out of this dirty scrape." "Anything to oblige ye, my sweet and pleasant fellow," rejoined Stubb, and with that he soon mounted to the deck, There a queer scene presented itself. The sailors, in tasselled capes of red worsted, were getting their heavy tackles in readiness for the whales, but they worked rather slow and talked very fast and seemed in anything but a good humour, all their noses upwardly projected from their faces like so many jib booms. Oh, I can imagine that, French sailors. Now and then a pair of them would drop their work and run up to the masthead to get some fresh air, some thinking they would catch the plague, dipped oakum in coal tar and at intervals held it to their nostrils. Others, having broken the stems of their pipes almost short off at the bowl, were vigorously puffing tobacco smoke so that it constantly filled their olfactories. Stubb was struck by a shower of outcries and anathemas proceeding from the captain's roundhouse abaft, and looking in that direction saw a fiery face thrust from behind the door, which was held ajar from within. This was the tormented surgeon, who, after in vain remonstrating against proceedings of the day, had betaken himself to the captain's roundhouse. Cabinet, he called it, to avoid the pest, but still he could not help yelling out his entreaties and indignations at times. Marking all this, Stubb argued well for his scheme, and turning to the gownsman had a little chat with him, during which the stranger mate expressed his detestation of his captain as a conceited ignoramus, who had brought them all into so unsavoury, unprofitable a pickle. Sounding him carefully, Stubb rather further perceived that the Guernsey man had not the slightest suspicion concerning the ambergris. He therefore held his peace on that head, but otherwise was quite frank and confidential with him, so that the two quickly concocted a little plan for both circumventing and satirizing the captain, without his at all dreaming of distrusting their sincerity. According to this little plan of theirs, the Guernseyman, under cover of an interpreter's office, was to tell the captain what he pleased, but as coming from Stubb, and as for Stubb, he was to utter any nonsense that should come uppermost in him during the interview. I like their plan. What shall I say to him first? Said he. Why, said Stubb, eyeing the velvet vest and the watch and seals, you may as well begin by telling him that he looks a sort of babyish to me, though I don't pretend to be a judge. He says, monsieur, said the gownsman in French, turning to his captain, that only yesterday his ship spoke a vessel, whose captain and chief mate, with 6 sailors, had all died of a fever caught from a blasted whale they had brought alongside. Upon this the captain started, and eagerly desired to know more. What now? said the gownsman to Stubb. Why, since he takes it so easy, tell him that I have now eyed him carefully. I am quite certain that he is no more fit to command a whale ship than St. Jago Monkey. In fact, tell him from me he's a baboon. He vows and declares, monsieur, that the other whale, the dried one, is far more deadly than the blasted one. In fine, monsieur, he conjures us, as we value our lives, to cut loose these fish. Instantly the captain ran forward, and in a loud voice commanded his crew to desist from hoisting the cutting tackles, and at once cast loose the cables and chains confining the whales to the ship. What now? said the gownsman, when the captain had returned to them. Why, let me see, you may as well tell him now that in fact, tell him I've diddled him, and, aside to himself, perhaps someone else. Why, he says, monsieur, that he's very happy to have been of service to us. Hearing this, the captain vowed that they were the grateful parties, meaning himself and mate, and concluded by inviting Stubb down into his cabin to drink a bottle of Bordeaux. He wants you to take a glass of wine with him, said the interpreter. Oh, thank him heartily, but tell him it's against my principles to drink with the man I've diddled. In fact, tell him I must go. He says, monsieur, that his principles won't admit of his drinking, but that if monsieur wants to live another day to drink, then monsieur had best drop all 4 boats and pull the ship away from these whales, for it's so calm they won't drift. I'll have a little sip. By this time, Stubb was over the side, and getting into his boat, hailed the gownsman to this effect, that having a long tow line in his boat, he would do what he could to help him. by pulling out the lighter whale of the two from the ship's side. While the Frenchmen's boats were then engaged in towing the ship away, Stubb benevolently towed away at his whale on the other way, ostentatiously slacking out a most unusually long tow line. Presently a breeze sprung up. Stubb feigned to cast off from the whale, hoisting his boats. The Frenchman soon increased his distance, while the Pequod slid in between him and Stubb's whale, whereupon Stubb quickly pulled to the floating body, and hailing the Pequod to give notice of his intentions, at once proceeded to reap the fruit from his unrighteous cunning. Seizing his sharp boat spade, he commanded an excavation in the body, a little behind the side fin. You would almost have thought he was digging a cellar there in the sea, and when at length his spade struck against the gaunt ribs, it was like turning up old Roman tiles and pottery buried in fat English loam. His boat's crew were all in high excitement, eagerly helping their chief, and looking as anxious as gold hunters. And all this time numberless fowls were diving and ducking and screaming and yelling and fighting around them. Stubb was beginning to look disappointed, especially as the horrible nosegay increased, when suddenly, from out of the very heart of this plague, there stole a faint stream of perfume, which flowed through the tide of bad smells without being absorbed by it as one river will flow into and then along with another, without at all blending with it for a time. "I have it! I have it!" cried Stubb, with delight, striking something in the subterranean regions. "A purse! A purse!" Dropping his spade, he thrust both hands in and drew out handfuls of something that looked like ripe Windsor soap, or rich mottled old cheese, very unctuous and savoury withal. You might easily dent it with your thumb. It is of a hue between yellow and ash colour. And this, good friends, is ambergris, worth a gold guinea an ounce to any druggist. Some 6 handfuls were obtained, but more was unavoidably lost into the sea, and still more, perhaps, might have been secured were it not for impatient Ahab's loud command to Stubb to desist and come on board, else the ship would bid them goodbye. I like that. I like Stubbs' cunning there, to con the French captain, or possibly the German captain if he was in Cologne. I don't know. But yeah, clever. One more chapter. It's not long. Chapter 92, Ambergris. So it's called ambergris. So it was said that it was between yellow and ash colour. So presumably amber, like orange, and grey grey. Ambergris. Now, this ambergris is a very curious substance, and so important as an article of commerce that in 1791 a certain Nantucket-born Captain Coffin was examined at the bar of the English House of Commons on that subject. For at that time, and indeed until a comparatively late day, the precise origin of ambergris remained, like amber itself, a problem to be learned. A problem to the learned. Though the word ambergris is but the French compound for grey amber, there you go. Yet the two substances are quite distinct. For amber, though at times found on the seacoast, is also dug up in some far inland soils, while ambergris is never found except upon the sea. Besides, amber is a hard, transparent, brittle, odourless substance, used for mouthpieces to pipes, for beads and ornaments, but ambergris is soft, waxy, and so highly fragrant and spicy. That is largely used in perfumery, in pastils, precious candles, hair powders, and pomatum. Whatever pomatum is. Looks orange. Yes, it does. Hello, Avon lady. Hello, how are you? Who would think then? Mr. Sanders. The Turks in cooking and also carry to Mecca for some time the purpose that frankincense is carried to St. Peter in Rome. Some wine merchants drop a few grains into claret to flavour it. Who would think then that such fine ladies and gentlemen would regale themselves with an essence found in the inglorious bowels of a sick whale? Yet it is so. By some, ambergris is supposed to be the cause, and by some others the effect of the dyspepsia in the whale. How to cure such dyspepsia, it were hard to say, unless by administering 3 or 4 boatloads of Brandreth's pills, and then running out of harm's way as labourers do in blasting rocks. That's an unpleasant thought, isn't it? I can only imagine what a whale would do under those circumstances. I have forgotten to say that there were found in this ambergris certain hard, round, bony plates, which at first Stubb thought might be trousers sailors or buttons, but afterwards turned out that they were nothing more than pieces of small squid bones embalmed in that matter. Now that the incorruption of this most fragrant ambergris should be found in the heart of such decay, is this nothing? Bethink thee of that saying of St. Paul in Corinthians about corruption and incorruption, how that we are sown in dishonour but raised in glory. And likewise call to mind that saying of Paracelsus about what it is that maketh the best musk. And forget not that strange fact that of all things of ill savour, cologne water in its rudimental manufacturing stages is the worst. I should like to conclude this chapter with the above appeal, but cannot, owing to my anxiety to repel a charge often made against whaling, and which in the estimation of some already biased minds might be considered as indirectly substantiated but by what has been said of the Frenchman's 2 whales. Elsewhere in this volume, the slanderous aspersion has been disproved that the vocation of whaling is throughout a slatternly, untidy business, but there is another thing to rebut. They hint that all whales always smell bad. Now, how did this odious stigma originate? I opine that it is plainly traceable to the first arrival of the Greenland whaling ships in London more than 2 centuries ago, because those whalemen did not then and do not now try out their oil at sea as the southern ships have always done, but cutting up the fresh blubber in small bits, thrust it through the bungholes of large casks, and carry it home in that manner. The shortness of the season in those icy seas, and the sudden and violent storms to which they are exposed, forbidding any other course. The consequence is that upon breaking into the hold and unloading one of those whale cemeteries in the Greenland dock, a savour is given forth, somewhat similar to those arising from excavating an old city graveyard for the foundations of lying-in hospital. I partly surmise also that this wicked charge against whalers may be likewise imputed to the existence on the coast of Greenland in former times of a Dutch village called Schmerenberg or Smeerenberg, which latter name is one used by the learned Fogo von Slack in his great work on smells, a textbook on that subject. In its name, as its name imports, smear, fat, berg, to put up, this village was funded in order to afford a place for the blubber of the Dutch whale fleet to be tried out without being taken home to Holland for that purpose. It was a collection of furnaces, fat kettles, and oil sheds, and when the works were in full operation certainly gave forth no very pleasant odour. But all in this is quite different with a South Sea sperm whaler, which in a voyage of 4 years perhaps, after completely filling her hold with oil, does not, perhaps, consume 50 days in the business of boiling out, and in the state that is casked, the oil is nearly scentless. The truth is that living or dead, if but decently treated, whales as a species are by no means creatures of ill odour, nor can whalemen be recognised as the people of the Middle Ages affected to detect a Jew in the company by the nose. Nor, indeed, can the whale possibly be otherwise than fragrant, when, as a general thing, he enjoys such high health, taking abundance of exercise always out of doors, though it is true seldom in the open air. I say that the motion of a sperm whale's flukes above water dispenses a perfume, as when a musk-scented lady rustles her dress in a warm parlour. As when, what then shall I liken the sperm whale to for fragrance, considering his magnitude? Must it not be to that famous elephant, with jewelled tusks and redolent with myrrh, which was led out of an Indian town to do honour to Alexander the Great? I like how Melville can get almost indignant. Melville or Ishmael can get almost indignant at the the insults that are apportioned to the whaling community. I will say that whales smell delightful. They're outdoors all the time. They're like a fine lady wafting her dress. Good on them, though. Good for defending whalers. All right, so we'll have another few chapters next week. I'm reading for 26 minutes. That's enough, I think. So you can watch all previous chapters on YouTube, at least. Most of them are on Haps. But if you just make sure you're following me on YouTube, you can find that in my wherever you are. You should be able to find it fairly easily. You just go to bio dot link / a 9630. If you go there, you should be able to find my YouTube and everything else. bio.link / a9630. And you'll be able to find all previous chapters on Moby Dick and some other books as well. So that'll do for the moment, I think. Still looking sunny, so I might go out for a little walk somewhere environmental and natural. We'll see. But that'll do for the moment. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. See you all next time. Goodbye, everyone. Have a nice Thursday. And I'll see you tonight for Phone Box Quiz as well. In 8 hours, I think. Is that right? 10 hours? Something like that. See you later, anyway.